welcome. It's really, really great to have you all here. And I know that calendars are super packed for everyone. So I really appreciate everyone who's taken the time to join today. And again, this will be recorded. So I'm going to share the recording and the slides after the session. We've got quite a bit to cover. So I'll start straight in. What exactly is user research? And I'm sure that you all have an idea of what UX research is. And I'm sure that you've done some research yourself and you know a few methods. But how we think about research is that it's all about making informed product decisions. Research allows us to do this by using a structured, systematic process. And this really means processes and methods that help us understand who our users are, what are they trying to achieve, what is their context, what are their motivations, why are they doing things, why they're not doing things. And now I'd like to briefly draw your attention to why it's so important and essential to do UX research. It really helps answer the questions that we have. But it's not just that, really. It uncovers gaps in knowledge and hidden pain points about things that we didn't know were relevant for users. It helps save time and money and resources in general in the long run because it allows us to correct course early on and avoid making costly mistakes. And one thing that I really want to highlight is that it keeps products competitive by first ensuring that they meet user needs as we're building the product, but also ensuring that we keep meeting user needs and bringing value as the product grows and as it hits the market and as it evolves. And I know that when you think about UX research, there's probably a ton of research methods that come to mind. But fundamentally, UX research aims to answer two broad questions. So first of all, this is who our users are and what they're trying to achieve. What is the context that our product is going to be used in? What is important to them and why? And the second broad question is, can people actually use the thing that we've designed to solve their problem? I mean, does it serve their needs? Does it solve their problems? Does it offer good enough experience for them to successfully use the product? With the first question, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure we're building the right thing, that we are responding to a real need, and that is really a problem that people are facing. And the second part to this, we want to make sure that we're building this thing that we've now identified that is the right thing to build, but that we're building it in the right way. And this is a quote exactly to that effect from a UX manager at Workday, that UX research helps reduce and mitigate the risk of building the wrong thing or building the right thing in the wrong way. So we have different research methods that we can use to approach these two broad questions depending on the specific needs that we have, and oftentimes depending on the constraints we're working under. But we're basically always trying to answer one of those two things to build a successful product. Now, by popular demand, let's go through some of the common misconceptions about UX research that I've encountered. The first one is that user research is not usability testing. And let me explain. So usability testing is important, and it's probably the most well-known method out there, and it's essential for getting timely and valuable reality checks from getting our products in front of users. But UX research is not solely usability testing, and usability testing is just one of a range of research methods that we use. And again, with usability testing, we're just trying to figure out what it is that users are doing by observing them. So this is myth number one. Myth number two is that UX research is not asking people what they want. And this is a pretty famous quote by Henry Ford that I think really captures the spirit of this. He was talking about inventing the car. And this is a little bit counterintuitive. And so when I've spoken with UX designers before, and this is one question that comes up quite a lot, well, if we're building a solution, why can't we come to users and just say, okay, do you want this? And the problem with this is that people often don't know what they want. Think back to the last impulse purchase that you made that is now probably sitting in your garage or in your attic because you have no use for it. But at the time when you were buying it, you kind of thought that you wanted it. So in UX research, we aim to understand what people need, not necessarily what they want, but without outright asking them what they need or what they want. Because people are not designers and they're not product strategists, unfortunately. So they can talk about their problems and their context and their frustrations and their pain points, but they can't really come up with solutions to their own problems. And they're also notoriously bad at predicting their future behavior. So it's really up to us to translate insights about user pain points into workable hypotheses or assumptions that for solutions that we can test with them later on. And I think this is the really exciting part about building a product. It's this back and forth with users and customers where you're refining your ideas and getting continuous feedback from them. So key takeaway from here is wanting something doesn't necessarily mean needing and doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to use the thing. The same goes for liking something. People like a lot of things. They oftentimes don't have use for them, and oftentimes they do a lot of things that they don't like. So liking is really not a reliable indication to go by when making decisions. I've seen this mostly at the stage of design, when companies go to their users with specific questions similar to what color of the button do you like more, or which landing page do you like more? And, they end up at the end of these sessions being very happy because they get a lot of opinions, but because people will give you opinions, but the liking that they talk about is not necessarily going to mean that they're going to use the thing at the end of the day. Another myth that I wanted to mention is that UX research is not about validating. And validating is a term that I often hear used in UX, and it's great to have common terminology, but it's also great to be aware of bias. And doing research is about being aware of and minimizing bias. We have to also be careful about how we frame what we do. And the word validate means confirm or corroborate. I think it's important to also understand from the get-go when we're going into a research project that we're not trying to confirm our assumptions or our designs or our concepts, but we're trying to test those and learn more about them through talking to our users. So it might turn out that our assumptions were right, great. It might turn out that our designs were amazing, even better. Or we might learn that we need to make some changes or come back to the drawing board. But this time we will be more confident because now we've learned more, we know more, and we can make better decisions. And lastly, in terms of myths, UX research is definitely not a one-time activity, because design in itself is an iterative process, and doing research as a one-time activity is more like putting a plaster on something broken. It's going to help you out for a while, but you really need to address the whole product development journey in a more holistic way. And one of the key reasons people often mistake UX research for usability testing, for example, is that unfortunately, many companies tend to squeeze in a few usability sessions the week before their final UAT goes through. So I've seen that quite a lot. And this is definitely not the ideal approach to UX research. So not a one-time activity. And this brings us to when is a good time to do UX research. And the answer is always. It's always a good time because user research isn't tied to a specific stage of product development, and it should be done early and often, and it should be done in an iterative way to support design, meaning that it helps to refine the product continuously through the design process. Of course, it's never too late to start doing research, even if it's smaller scale, even if you're testing with or speaking to fewer users, but just so long as you can get some feedback. Now we're coming to the UX research process. Here I wanted to briefly present what the research process looks like and what you can expect when we are running studies. So the research process follows a predefined sort of structured workflow, and that's done to ensure that we get high quality insights at the end of the day, that we're not skipping steps, and we are getting the insights that we actually want and need. So we're starting with project scoping, then we move on to determining a research strategy, then we plan and execute, meaning test, and we do the data synthesis and share our insights in a little bit more detail at the first stage of project scoping, when we're deciding on our priorities and what research studies we will be doing. And when you reach out to me and you pitch your idea and we decide that this is a high priority project and we're going to start working on this, the first stage really is aligning on goals and scope. What we want to achieve at this stage is we want to understand where our gaps in knowledge lie and what are really the top priorities of the things we don't know but want to learn about. And it's the stage when we want to relate this back to what our company goals are, what our objectives are for our products, and which specific decisions this research is going to look to inform. And what's really important at this stage is alignment on the scope of the project. So what will be within scope and what will be outside of the scope of the project. For the next stage, I will be creating a research plan. So designing a research approach that will define the best methods given the research questions that we have and also the constraints that we're working under to make sure that we get the type of insights that we need. And of course, this is the stage where I'm going to be getting the sign off from my stakeholders just to ensure that what we've discussed at this stage, we're still aligned on it and we're still on the same page. We still have the same key objectives that we want to achieve. Moving on to the next stage, this is the most fun for me, really, which is getting the right participants in, identifying those key characteristics of the people that we want to be interviewing or testing with to get the best insights, and actually doing the data collection, doing the actual research. At the next stage is the data analysis, because once you gather all of that heaps of information, normally it's just data. And I love digging through it and identifying those themes and patterns that actually relate back to our research goals at the beginning when we were scoping, and producing actionable recommendations and suggestions to relevant stakeholders to drive that decision making. And the fifth stage is the sharing of the insights, which is the stage that I'm guessing you will be most loving. This is where I'll be sharing the insights that we've got, making recommendations, and just making sure that we are all on the same page and we can all understand where users are coming from in terms of needs and challenges, and what we've learned, what it's going to mean for our product. So these are the major stages of how a research project is run.